Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network as we continue our celebration of women and Women's History Month. It gives us great pleasure to speak to women in our own backyards who are doing amazing things. Our guest this morning is Jessica Juneau Clark. She's a fault protection system engineer at NASA, and she is a 2006 graduate from Holy Savior Menard, all the way from Southern California. We welcome her home right here on the OPT Network. Jessica, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So California is a big, long leap from Pineville, Louisiana.
Yes, it is.
And so let's talk about those early years being a girl who obviously loved math and science. How does that work?
Yeah, just as a little girl, I kind of gravitated toward math and science. I'm the oldest of four girls. I guess I didn't have any older brothers that my dad could latch on to and teach a lot of math and science to. So, I just remember several days a week, he would sit down with me and talk through, hey, do you want to learn how an airplane flies? This is what an airplane wing looks like. And he would take the time to sit down and talk to me about these things. And it really, made it something not intimidating, but fascinating to me. Both my parents are in medicine as well. My mom's a nurse and he's a pharmacist. So talking about at least medical science was a pretty normal thing in my household. But yeah, I guess just from a young age, I liked the complexity of math and science and the fact that I could control it. I could, no matter what happened in the outside world, there's a set universal language that kind of governs the entire universe. And no matter where you live, you can learn that language and you can use it to change the world. So,
wow. Do you think
I gravitated to that?
Do you think, Jessica, on the surface, and this may be a question where you want to be modest, I don't know, but I have to ask it for every young girl who is watching this and you're speaking to her possibility. Were you just naturally smart, or did you dive into the universal language, as you call it, grow in it and practice and become good?
Yeah, I mean, saying I'm naturally smart is kind of a hard question to answer.
Sure.
I think really curiosity is to me the biggest thing. If you can have all the natural abilities in the world, but if you're not curious and you don't have a passion, you're only going to go so far. And really hard work and curiosity together, I feel like those two things really help to foment an education in STEM, and not being intimidated by it, which is difficult if you don't see people who look like you in STEM. It may feel like, well, this isn't something I would traditionally do, or I'm allowed to do, or maybe I don't have the skills to do it. So I'm really encouraged by how many more women and people of color we're starting to see in STEM, because I feel like that's so important to opening it up for other people and their creativity.
Sure. So let's talk about how Holy Savior Menard cultivated your curiosity and helped you to grow so that you could academically go to the next level.
Yeah. So at Menard's not the biggest school. I think at the time we had about 800 students total. And so my class was about 80 kids. And there was kind of a benefit there in that we didn't have a ton of like a diversity of classes, but you got a lot of one-on-one time. If you took a chemistry class, you would have a smaller class size, so you could get a little bit more focused attention. And while I was enrolled there, I made a point of signing up for every single math and science class they offered.
Wow. Who does that? Every single math and science class that they offer. How does that? I mean, did you just love it that much?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I think, when you find what you're passionate about in life, it's not work, it's just interesting to you. And that's what math and science was for me. It was just interesting to me. And so I was just so excited about it. I couldn't help myself but sign up for all the classes I could. Even then, when I went to college, I went to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, and it's a pretty prestigious engineering school. So, coming from a small town, there were a lot of people enrolled who had all these AP credit classes, and, they were already essentially juniors. And I had, I think, 3 AP credit hours.
Was that
so
intimidating?
That was intimidating. Oh yeah, it was very intimidating.
So what do your parents say to you to let you know that it doesn't matter that you've come from small town USA, that you can still compete and you got this?
Yeah, I mean, they say just that, and they never said anything. I can't recall a single time that they said, you should really kind of tamp down on your dreams here. Maybe let's be a little more realistic. They always encouraged us, and they always said, you can do whatever you set your mind to. It may be difficult and you're going to have to work really hard, but, they never said anything to tamp down on our imagination of what we could be. And I feel like that's the biggest thing, just having someone in your court who believes in you and is always, pushing for you to get, the best education that they can, and encouraging you along the way.
So at what point do you decide that you are going to major in aerospace engineering?
So interestingly, when I enrolled at Georgia Tech, I started out in biomedical engineering. I thought I wanted to be a doctor because I had, everyone in my family was in medicine of some sort. And I'd always heard, oh, well, you like math and science and, you're smart, you should be a doctor. So that's where I started out. And it was my freshman year when I took a laboratory class when I realized that I didn't really like biology. It was just, I had to do this experiment with a bunch of these little crustaceans, and we were like varying the amount of toxicity in their, in the tubes that they were in. And then we were supposed to count like how many eggs each of the crustaceans produced. And I came back the next day and they had all died. And I was like, okay, well, this is fascinating, but I think it was living things are a little too unpredictable for me. They're very, and kudos to people who work in medicine, especially, now in the midst of a pandemic.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of there's an art to it sometimes. And so it's something about aerospace engineering just pulled me in. I thought you had to be someone who was really into airplanes, which is, 1/3 of it. It's actually aircraft, rotorcraft, like helicopters. And then the third category is spacecraft. So I thought you had to be someone who was really, passionate about aircraft. But when I, toured the department a little more, I learned like, oh, there's several options, including spacecraft, and something about that just pulled me in. I didn't have any, family members or friends who had been in aerospace engineering. So it really just was like a gut feel that this would work out. This would be a good fit. And I feel like I lucked out in that it was the right fit for me, and, was very challenging, but very interesting. And to me, has like a high payoff.
Sure.
Because you get to do really cool things.
Sure. Let's take a break here, Jessica. But when we come back, we're going to talk about how you prepare yourself over the last 5 years for programming the Perseverance Rover that everyone is talking about, and Mars, and how all that comes together. Our guest this morning is Jessica Juneau Clark. She is the Fault Protection Systems Engineer at NASA. Stay on point. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. As we celebrate amazing women doing amazing things, well, we look around in our own backyards and we find some very incredible women like Jessica Juneau Clark. She's the Fault Protection Systems Engineer at NASA. She is also an aerospace engineer that graduated from Georgia Tech, and she graduated high school from Holy Savior Menard. And we're talking about her journey and how we dispel all of the fear and the anxiety and the angst even that comes along with when you got to take that math class or you got to take that science class and just doing enough. And so how in your career as a young woman are you speaking to girls about the possibility of what you are doing?
Yeah, I mean, what I tell young women and girls is just to not be intimidated. Don't let what other people know keep you from learning. When I would, take a class at Georgia Tech, sometimes I would be the only female in the room, and there would be 75 people in that classroom. And so you definitely feel like you stand out. I mean, one benefit is everyone knew my name. So that was good. But, you get very intimidated.
What do you think when you walk into a classroom or an auditorium at Georgia Tech and you're the only woman there? What is that moment like?
You feel like you're the other, it's hard to ignore that there's something different about you, and you feel that they all see that you're different. And so in a way you almost feel like you have to be an ambassador for women because you're the one you're the only one representing that group in the room. But, after that initial fear and uncomfortableness that you feel, you can kind of push past that and, just try to focus on the problems, like the math problems. I mean, they don't care who you are. It doesn't matter. There's either you're going to get the right answer, you're going to get the wrong answer. And it doesn't matter if you're the only woman in the room. It's really just one step at a time and, just pushing ahead to try to solve the problem in front of you. So, and like I said, it's almost kind of an advantage sometimes because I would be the only female in the class. Like all the guys knew my name. And so if there was ever, a question or whatever, I kind of always came up. It's like, oh, what's Jessica think? Because
you were the only girl in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were one of the smartest in the room. Is there pressure then? Jessica, that you're carrying the other women that will come behind you, that you gotta excel and you have to do well?
Yeah, you feel like if you say something wrong or you trip up that day, that it might reflect poorly on women as a whole. And wow. and I don't know if that's just a perception for me as an individual or if any of those guys in the room even think about that, but it's definitely a feeling that you have when you're the only person of a particular category in the room. Since then, actually on the Mars 2020 project, the Perseverance Rover project, the team that I work on is actually very diverse in terms of gender. I would say we're somewhere close to 50-50. And I noticed pretty early on that I stopped even paying attention to how many women or men were in the room because there was enough representation that it just wasn't even something I observed anymore. And it was all of a sudden we were just all engineers.
It was about the work.
Yeah. It was really about the quality of your work, and everyone was just another engineer, and we all worked together on a team. We were team members, so I think that that's one of the reasons why it's so important to get more representation of different groups, because if you're the only person of a particular group, it makes you kind of feel like the other. But if you get more people from that group, it tends to be less about that and just more about you're just another engineer and you're not the lone ambassador anymore.
So tell us about the last 5 years of your life and help us who are not nearly as savvy with science. Help us to understand. We've heard about Perseverance, but help us Perseverance Rover, but help us to understand what it is and why it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. The mission is incredibly important. It's helping to answer several questions, but one of the biggest ones is, are we alone in the universe? Is this the only planet that has life? Or did our nearest neighbor, or one of our nearest neighbors in our solar system, also have life at one point? That would kind of open the door for there being life all over the universe. Because Mars is within what we call like the Goldilocks zone, where water can exist in liquid form on the surface. It doesn't anymore because the atmosphere of Mars changed. But at one point it did. There was a lake in the location where the rover is right now. And so scientists see that as like the perfect location for life, ancient life, to have formed. So that's one of the biggest questions that this mission is trying to answer is, are we alone, or what's the likelihood that there's life all over the universe? Because we've identified planets that are in similar Goldilocks zones all throughout the universe. So that would be a huge discovery.
Wow. And so tell us about the last 5 years programming Perseverance.
Yeah, so ironically, I didn't become a medical doctor, but what I do now for the different spacecraft at JPL is kind of like being a doctor. We program the rover or the spacecraft, whatever it is, to detect that something has gone wrong. Say like a piece of its avionics has an issue and it needs to determine that there's something wrong, that it's sick, essentially, and take care of itself, because we can't actually repair it. There's no mechanics on Mars, and you're hurtling through space. We can't stop and switch out a part or, get it to a safe state. So we had to program it to take care of itself. And that was the biggest contribution I made, was putting in place all this software behaviors for it to figure out something went wrong and then take care of itself, get safe. And then we test it. We just tested it for, I think I did the math, and we did like over 1,000 hours of just running it through simulations of, like you would like unplug a cable in this twin test bed that's like Perseverance, but it's not the real one, and see that it can detect that problem and fix itself. So our team basically just kept running simulations over and over. I mean, honestly, up until the day we landed. And even still, now that it's on the surface of Mars, we keep testing because we can still change its software and do like an upgrade, kind of like on your phone, you get, software upgrades. If we find a bug on Perseverance, we can fix it and upload a new version. So it's an ongoing job. Like the day that we landed was like the beginning of another part of our jobs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's take a break here, but when we come back, we'll talk about what's next and how we inspire the next generation of women. And because it's Women's History Month, we're talking about women. And for this conversation, we're talking about math, science, technology, and engineering. Stay on point. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we are celebrating women who are doing extraordinary things. And our guest this morning is Jessica Juneau Clark. She's from Pineville, Louisiana. She's the Fault Protection Systems Engineer at NASA. And we're talking about her work on Perseverance Rover. And so you spent 5 years of your life getting ready for the moment. What day was that? Was that like February the 18th?
Yes. Yeah. February 18th.
When it landed. And so after 5 years of making sure that your baby, if it gets sick, you can fix it. So what is that moment like when it finally reaches Mars?
It was something that's really hard to put into words. It was overwhelming and emotional and just a sigh of relief, that and just the biggest payoff you could imagine. Just seeing, and when we got the pictures back a couple minutes after we got touchdown confirmed, we got pictures from our cameras, and you see the surface of Mars, like you see an alien planet.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. I don't have kids, but I could imagine this is like what seeing your kid, for the first time is like. I was completely in shock. We all couldn't hug because of COVID, and we couldn't high five. So I think we're all just kind of, trying to process it in our own little seats, and I was completely overwhelmed because I had spent so many years thinking of all the things that could have gone wrong. And, the biggest thing that could have gone wrong is that we didn't land. So I'd been preparing myself for that as a possibility, and just anticipating everything that could go wrong. Like the night before, I woke up every hour or so and just had to check on Perseverance, look at the data coming back to make sure she was still okay, like you would a baby.
She's a girl. She's a girl.
Oh, she's definitely a girl. Yeah.
I love it. She's a girl.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of do that at NASA anyways, because it's like, with ships, you call them female names, but yeah, we all refer to Perseverance as a she. So yeah, I'm like checking on her every hour, just eaten up, like, what if this happens? What if that happens? And then there's a point actually when we go to land, because it takes 11 minutes for us to send a signal to her and then get that, and then another 11 minutes for it to come back to us. There's a point where there's nothing you can do. You're just watching what happened 11 minutes ago.
Wow.
And because landing takes 7 minutes. So she's completely on her own. So there was a moment when we gave this go to basically turn off our ability to send her, commands. And I just sat back and tried to soak up the moment and was like, this, no matter what happens, I did my absolute hardest to get it here, and I gave it everything I could. And this team of people, we did it together, and we'll be here together no matter what happens. And it was just kind of like you took your hands off the steering wheel and you had to just sit back and let her go.
You had to surrender. You had to surrender because you were no longer in control.
Absolutely. Like, you're so used to just trying to control everything and just trying to analyze everything. And then that moment, it was like a switch went off, and I just sat back in my chair and I didn't type anything anymore. I was just watching what was going on, just trying to absorb it.
How many people are on the team, Jessica, that were a part of your team?
So on the project as a whole, I think there's a couple thousand people, actually, people all over the world. We have partners internationally. But, on the group of people that got Perseverance, from launch until landing, I would guess it's a couple hundred people. So in the room, because of COVID, we had to really decrease. We had 30 people in that one mission control room. Normally we pack that with as many people as we can.
Wow.
So it was sad knowing there were all these people spread across the world and watching from their living rooms who would otherwise be there to celebrate with us. So it was an honor to represent them. And it was heavy, knowing that you're representing a lot more people who gave years of their lives for this.
Amazing. And so how long will Perseverance be on Mars?
So Perseverance will actually be on Mars forever unless we bring her back. But her mission is about 1 Martian year. So
one Martian year.
Which is about 2 Earth years, because it takes Mars a lot longer to go around the sun. So, but if it's similar to our previous missions, like Curiosity, which is a very similar rover, Curiosity is going on, I think, 9 years on Mars. So our rovers tend to run a lot longer than they're originally supposed to. And she has a nuclear power source. It will eventually run out of juice, It's not like solar panels where if you can at least get the dust off of them, you can maybe charge up the batteries. So there will be a point where, she won't really be able to do much more than maybe wake up every once in a while. But
what are we hoping?
Yeah,
what is the mission? Okay, we want to know, and you've kind of determined that life could have been inhabited on Mars. What else will Perseverance? What else will she tell us?
well, she's an overachiever, so she has
I
7
love it.
instruments.
She's an
Yeah.
overachiever.
Oh yeah, she has 7 science instruments. There's one that's like a radar under the belly of the rover that is, pings the ground when she drives, and it can determine the structure of Mars and the top surface. There's something called MOXIE that is actually for future human exploration, and it converts carbon dioxide into oxygen, just like what we would need if humans were to go to Mars. We've got a ton of instruments on the arm that are, basically determining the composition of the rocks and soil that are in the crater. And we also have a sample caching system. So one of the biggest things is collecting samples of Martian soil and rock, and then putting them in these very clean tubes, and then eventually dropping them off for a future mission to come and get and bring back to the Earth. Because the scientists really, they can do a lot more when they have physical samples in a laboratory on Earth. And then on top of that, it also has a little helicopter. Perseverance has a helicopter underneath the belly, kind of like a little baby, that is going to she's going to drop it off in a specific location. And then it's going to do 5 test flights on Mars, which will be the first time we've ever flown a rotor craft on another planet. So that'll be really cool. I'm excited to see that work.
Wow. And so what's next for you, Jessica? You have given, and many people have given so much time and years of work and dedication to this. What will be next for you?
Definitely after landing, I felt like I checked off a big box in my life. I was like, this is going to be really hard to top. And we even got a phone call from the president a few days ago. And so, part of me was like, well, I could retire at this point. I'd be pretty happy. But the thrill of landing is it's such a adrenaline rush that part of me is like, all right, what's the next one? I'm ready to do the next one. So there's lots of different missions always going on at JPL. Fortunately, we have, missions going to Jupiter and Saturn and lots of Earth missions, and then Mars sample return. So right now I'm still supporting the rover, for the beginning, just making sure that Perseverance, everything goes okay. And we get through a lot of the first time events. But then I'll probably roll into one of our other missions at JPL. So
what do you say
on to the next adventure?
And what do you say to girls that are watching that want to be astronauts, that want to be aerospace engineers, or engineers that could work on spacecrafts, or that could be a part of NASA? What do you say to them that come from small town USA, just like you, that just, it seems so far away? It seems like space. It could be that far away.
Yeah. I think it's don't get intimidated, and know that you're not going to just wake up one day and be working at NASA. It's baby steps. We have people at NASA, at JPL, who didn't even start working at JPL until they were
Tell
in
us
their
what
40s.
JPL, what does JPL stand for?
Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So that's the specific place I work at in Pasadena. But we have some of our most talented engineers maybe didn't even start out at JPL until their 40s,
Wow.
And so it's not something you have to, there's not a formula. I thought there was, but there's not. It's really
Of course
just...
you did. You're a scientist. You thought there was a formula that you could work out, and you do this and it should put you where you want to be.
Yeah, it's not. I think the biggest thing is, just make sure whatever it is you're doing, try to be true to what you're passionate about A job is a job, but if you can do something that you're passionate about as well, I think that's so worth it, you know? And another thing advice I give to women and girls is networking is so important. And we tend to shy away from that or not want to bug people or, but networking is so important in so many industries. And
were you able to do that? Were you able to network? Were there enough women that you could look at and say, I want to be like her, or I want her to mentor me?
I think at Georgia Tech, there weren't as many. I think there was like one female professor in our department, but I had to learn how to network with men, you know, like network, even though that may be intimidating or uncomfortable, just reach out to people and try to set up a meeting, you know, whatever. And I've found that if you're willing to do that, most people see it as, you know, a compliment and are willing to help you. But it's important not to be intimidated, even if someone you're networking with doesn't look like you.
When you were in high school and you decided that you were going to be an engineer, was there one teacher that was there, that was rooting you on, that said, Jessica, you got this, you can do this?
Oh, there were actually several. And I think about them a lot, especially looking back at Landing. There's one teacher, Dennis Ward, who he was actually my history teacher in high school, but to this day, he's always takes out news clippings of any of his students, you know, and is always, you know, praising us for whatever our accomplishments are, even though he's retired from teaching. And I feel like he was a really big cheerleader for me and for so many other students at that school. So teachers are incredibly important in inspiring people and pushing them to achieve something they may not think they can do.
So what do you want to say to everybody at home that is watching you, that is just ultra proud of you? And really, I'm sure it took a village to cheer you on and to support you. Before we've got to let you go, what do you want to say to those people?
I want to say thank you. And I'm honored to represent Louisiana and my hometown. And yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it without so many people from Louisiana believing in me and teaching me about hard work and just really trying to follow my dreams. And I'll always consider myself as a Louisianian. So even though I'm living in California now.
There you go. Jessica, we can't wait to see what's next for you. Thank you so much for taking the time and walking us through your journey. We believe that every story gives life and hope to the next story. And hopefully Louisiana will churn out many, many more engineers and women in space and math, science, technology, engineering.
Yeah.
Jessica, thank you a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Indeed. Our guest this morning, Jessica Juneau Clark. She's the Fault Protection Systems Engineer at NASA. Stay on point. We're back right after this.